Well, the world is still absorbing the shock of the attacks. Statements of support have poured in from America's allies worldwide. Arab leaders have been almost unanimous in their condemnation, with only Iraq backing the attacks.
A new dawn in America. This morning, the most powerful country in the world woke up to an almost unbearable reality. The last 24 hours has read like an epic film drama of unbelievable proportions. The terrorist attacks have struck at the heart of Fortress America and also at the heart of democracy. World leaders have been giving their reaction to the terrible scenes in New York and Washington. The Pope called for prayers for the families of those who've lost loved ones.
Today, my heartfelt sympathy is with the American people, subjected yesterday to inhuman terrorist attacks which have taken the lives of thousands of innocent human beings and caused unspeakable sorrow.
A horrible act of terror and violence. This world must unite to fight against terrorism in all its forms and root out this modern-day evil.
The United States has borne the brunt of this brutal, wicked attack, but in a way it's an attack against all our ways of life. And there will of course have been many Europeans, Chinese, Africans who will have been murdered in the World Trade Center. We have to make it absolutely clear that there is complete solidarity with the United States.
It is a war, and we've got to respond in the sense that it isn't going to be solved with a single counterattack against one individual. It's going to be a long-term conflict, and it's going to be fought on many fronts: the military front, the intelligence front, the law enforcement front, the diplomatic front. And it's a war not just against the United States, it's a war against civilization. It's a war against all nations that believe in democracy.
Afghanistan's Taliban government has said revenge is understandable, but it says only once America has proof of who was behind the hijackings. The American president has promised to punish the perpetrators of terror. His nation is in shock and mourning. Today, Ireland declared a national day of mourning. Israel has done the same. Rachel Ellison, BBC News.
Well, staying with the Middle East there, because we've just had these pictures in from Gaza of the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat donating blood. He followed up his offer of assistance by going to the blood donation centre. You'll remember that yesterday he condemned the attacks on New York and Washington very swiftly, and he says that donating blood today is a gesture of support to the American people. We understand that he's also had a telephone conversation with Javier Solana, the EU Foreign and Security Chief.
Well, going back to Washington now, joining us from one of our studios there is the former US Defense Secretary, Caspar Weinberger. Mr. Weinberger, if you were advising your President George W. Bush tonight, what would you be telling him to do?
Well, doing just what he...
Well, going back to Washington now, joining us from one of our studios there is the former US Defense Secretary, Caspar Weinberger. Mr. Weinberger, if you were advising your President George W. Bush tonight, what would you be telling him to do?
Well, doing just what he is doing, and that is using all of the intelligence gathering capabilities we have to identify the terrorists who did this and any country that may be harboring them or supporting them, and then using all of the military resources we have, which are considerable, to go after them and destroy them. That's what he's doing, and that's exactly what I think should be done, and I don't think that he needs any advice from me.
Is that one of the potential pitfalls, though? You were talking there about terrorists and the countries that harbour them. So far, and it's early days, but so far over the past 24 hours, the State Department seems not to be differentiating between those two ideas.
Well, I don't know what the State Department is doing, but I don't think they're two ideas. I think it's all part of the same thing, because in law, anybody who joins in a conspiracy or who helps conspirators is equally guilty, and that, I think, is exactly the situation that the President was talking about. I don't know of any different view at the State Department.
As you're talking to us, I should mention that we're looking at the latest live pictures of the Pentagon following on from the events of yesterday. How does the United States strike a balance, though? How does George W. Bush strike a balance between reacting to the understandable anger in the US and the reality. The reality is this: you don't know who the enemy is.
We don't know yet, but we're going to devote every opportunity and every available resource we have to finding out. And when you do that, then you will not have any hesitancy, I hope, or any slowness or any inadequacy of the response. The only thing that's going on now is to make sure that we have the right targets, and that is essential to do that. You can't just set out and blindly bomb somebody or something that you think may have had something to do with it. You have to be certain. When you're certain, you use every resource that you have to destroy it. And I don't think there are any different options. I don't think there are any different courses. And I hope nobody's going to talk about a measured response, because when you have actions of this kind, it's not possible to measure any response. You have to use every single ounce of strength and power that you have to destroy it.
So, in effect, you're talking about bombing another country when you find out where that other country is.
No, when we find out, we would use all the appropriate means of destroying the people who did it, wherever they may be, and anybody who's helping them. And that may be done in a number of different ways, in all of which we're capable of using.
Is it your feeling that these attacks will, in effect, alter U.S. foreign policy for perhaps decades to come?
Well, I hope it will alter it in favor of a missile defense, without any slight question, without any more nonsense about whether we're violating an ABM treaty that forbids an effective defense. People are saying, well, missile defense wouldn't have stopped yesterday's tragedy. That may be true, but on the other hand, a missile attack with biological or chemical or nuclear warheads would be infinitely more damaging than the horrors that took place yesterday.
But when just for a second, if I may, pardon me. When you talk about missile defense, you've already discussed the argument about whether missile defense would have been capable of reacting to 4 Boeing aircraft. It wouldn't have been. But on top of that, missile defense was a bad idea as far as many European countries were concerned before this attack anyway.
I think they'll have to change that idea, and I hope they will after they hear what sort of damage can be done even without using missiles. The idea that the missile defense would not necessarily have stopped yesterday is certainly no argument for not going ahead with it for the kinds of tragedies that are still perfectly in the hands of terrorists to use. And that's why it's essential that we have that as well as better defenses against what happened yesterday.
Mr. Weinberger, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.